So I just realized something, and Precise Presenter brought it to my attention. Shout out to him for mentioning the ring rankings in his Terrence Crawford analysis. But I just realized that Naoya Inoue isn't even rated top 10 by the ring rankings. I'm guessing he's probably not rated top 10 by too many pound for pound rankings, whether it's from these like official sources like The Ring or ESPN or some of these other organizations that'll actually rank fighters pound for pound, aside from just in each weight class individually. But as far as I'm concerned, Naoya Inoue has done more than almost everybody on the pound for pound list that's ranked ahead of him on the ring rankings. You got Roman Gonzalez, Sergey Kovalev, Gennady Golovkin, Andre Ward, Guillermo Rigondeaux, Terrence Crawford, Manny Pacquiao, Canelo Alvarez, Shinsuke Yamanaka, and Tim Bradley. Now, I'm gonna be real. Inoue has definitely done more than Saul Canelo Alvarez. First of all, he didn't win his title in a vacant title. He didn't win it against a guy like Matthew Hatton. He won it against a reigning champion, Adrian Confessor Hernandez, a legitimate champion, a guy that had defended that belt several times over. He had lost it and then he won it back and then defended it a bunch more times. That's the type of fighter that Adrian Hernandez is. A guy that wasn't set back from any kind of a loss, and it was a knockout loss. He wasn't set back. He came right back, won that shit right back, and I mean that's all there was to it. Matter of fact, he knocked the same guy out that knocked him out. He did it quicker than him too. So if there was any doubt as to how good Adrian Hernandez was, there wasn't any after he got the rematch and got revenge. Of course, Inoue went in there and knocked Hernandez out. Hernandez incidentally didn't go back for a rematch. He moved up in weight. But funny enough, Inoue eventually moved up in weight too, but that's besides the point. Because Naoya Inoue also defeated Ryoichi Taguchi right before that title shot at Adrian Hernandez. Ryoichi Taguchi went on to become one of the world champions at 108 after Inoue left. So much like Roman Gonzalez that I mentioned in my video that I did about Chocolatito, Inoue is a guy that will defeat a fighter, and then that fighter will go on to become a great fighter, or a very good fighter at least, a world champion at the very least. And Taguchi still hasn't lost that, so he's still reigning. So that right there is proof positive of Naoya Inoue's quality. More proof positive is that in his first defense of the belt they won against Hernandez, fought Smotiak Kokitjim, knocked him down in the 4th and 6th round, then knocked him out in the 11th round. He didn't let it go to the scorecards. More proof to that is the fact that he jumped over 112 pounds entirely. Sure, I mean, some people might say that he was avoiding Roman Gonzalez and Juan Estrada and Kazuto Yoko, or I'm not wrong, depending on the particular date. But in all honesty, I mean, he was fighting. He moved up beyond 112 to fight the best 115 pounder, the best super flyweight, the number one, the clear number one super flyweight in Omar Andres Narvaez of Argentina. A guy who in 12 rounds with Nonito Donaire was never in any trouble of being stopped, who gave Donaire a hell of a lot of problems, and even though the judges scored it a shutout for Donaire, Narvaez won at least a couple of those rounds. And matter of fact, I'll posit to you this way. Omar Narvaez set up the blueprint for how Guillermo Rigondeaux would eventually go on to defeat Nonito Donaire. And I'd be willing to bet you Rigondeaux watched tape of that Narvaez fight, because Narvaez fights very similarly to the way Rigondeaux fights. Very similarly. He's a very defensive-minded southpaw fighter, a short guy, similar to Rigo, maybe a tad shorter. He's a very quick guy, quick hands, quick feet, and he can punch. He's a puncher. Most of the defenses that Omar Narvaez had made, because he was a two-weight champion himself. He was a 112 champion, then a 115 champion, and he was undefeated when he fought Donaire. Donaire was his only loss. And like I said, he kind of humiliated Donaire in several spots of that fight. The crowd was booing, and that was a Donaire crowd. There wasn't anybody there really rooting for Narvaez. So the crowd booing was because Donaire wasn't doing his job. Similar to the way that, when the crowd was booing Pacquiao Bradley, that's because Pacquiao wasn't going in there knocking out Bradley the way people thought he was supposed to. Donaire was supposed to knock out this smaller guy. he wasn't able to, and he got outboxed by him in several instances. The only thing that really saved him was the fact that he was landing the big flashy hooks and stuff, that he was loading up like a motherfucker on. But otherwise, Narvaez gave him as many problems as any fighter ever did. Not only that, but he went on to fight his mandatory. Of course, he was out for a while, for almost a year after the Narvaez fight, with a hand injury. He fought his mandatory, Walito Paredes, a guy who legitimately earned that title shot. He was his mandatory. When you're the mandatory, you can't really criticize a champion too much for a mandatory unless that mandatory is like clearly garbage. Walito Paredes was not the case. Walito Paredes had won several step-up fights before then, and won the interim WBO championship against, he actually drew in the interim WBO championship fight that he had against David Carmona. Him and Carmona is actually Inoue's next opponent, but him and Carmona were basically equal level. Either one should have been the mandatory, wound up being Paredes. Now Inoue immediately goes out there, hits him with a 4-piece, knocks him out in 2 rounds. Makes it look easy. Makes it look real easy. Makes the guy look like a nobody. And honestly, I don't see too many of these other guys on the pound for pound rankings doing that. Guillermo Rigondeaux should have knocked out this last guy he fought. He should have done it. Drion Francisco. He should have knocked him out. He had no business going 12 rounds with the guy. He had no business losing rounds to the guy. Andre Ward, I guess you can't really criticize him too much for beating up Paul Smith, because I guess he took out the trash that he was supposed to take out. But yet and still, what was he doing all that time before that? All that time that Andre Ward was taking off, arguing with his promoter and arguing about things with regard to Bude, and arguing with things with regard to a Carl Froch rematch, and arguing with things with regard to Golovkin and Kovalev. He's not doing anything. Now he's putting in work. He was doing all that work that I just talked about. So, he got the stoppage against the guy that he should have beat in Paul Smith. But, I'd say that's at least a wash. At the very least a wash. Because Edwin Rodriguez really didn't belong in that same ring with Andre Ward either. And I think that's kind of shown since then. Especially with that crazy-ass fight that Rodriguez had last year. That shows you the level of fight that Rodriguez is. A fun guy, but definitely not pound for pound or even the best scalp for a pound for pound level guy. The way Ward is. Aside from that, you got Saul Canelo Alvarez, who's, insisting on bringing these guys up from smaller weights. And I tend to go easy on guys with regard to that, because almost all these fighters are draining themselves too much in the first fucking place. But Canelo's done it enough times that he's not in any way immune to criticism for it. And especially if I'm going to criticize Rigondeaux for not knocking out a fucking super flyweight in Drion Francisco, I'm definitely going to criticize Canelo Alvarez for, the several of the opponents that he's had since he's pretty much been a household name. Not only Matthew Hatton, but a weight drain James Kirkland. James Kirkland cannot make that weight healthy anymore. He didn't belong there. He didn't even make the weight healthy back when Nobuhiro Ishida knocked him out, and that was at middleweight. So, there's that. You got Alfredo Angulo, who wasn't making that weight healthy anymore. That was another weight drain. And then you got Miguel Cotto, who, for all intents and purposes, Saul Canelo Alvarez should have knocked out. If a smaller guy in Pacquiao's knocking him out, if a smaller guy in Mayweather's almost knocking him out, if a smaller guy in Margarito, yes, he's a smaller guy, because Margarito, regardless of being taller than Alvarez, Alvarez is built way larger than Margarito ever was at the same age. By the time Alvarez is Margarito's age, he's going to be a fucking light heavyweight. So, that's assuming, quote unquote, he isn't already a light heavyweight, which he really is, and on Fight Night anyway. Margarito was more of a guy that rehydrated into the 160s. Alvarez doesn't see 160 but for about a couple weeks before the weigh-in, when he's in hard-ass training camp. Already fucking preparing to dehydrate all the way down to 155, whatever bullshit-ass catchweight he decides to make up in his fucking head. And then you got, Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford, as far as I'm concerned, he's greener than green compared to Naoya Inoue. Naoya Inoue is only 22 years old, people, and he's only been a pro for 3.5 years. He's accomplished more than Terrence Crawford. Crawford, yeah, he's a two-weight champion. Inoue is a two-weight champion, beating arguably one of the best fighters at 108, then beating the best, inarguably the best, 115-pounder. That would have been equivalent to Crawford jumping right up to welterweight and knocking off Kell Brook. And unless he's doing that, then no. He really doesn't belong ahead of Inoue. At all. I could see the arguments in a way for Ward and Rigondeaux, just because they've been around for a lot longer. They've racked up certain good wins that I could argue for. But even then, neither of them have done any accomplishments beyond the weight that they started at. Rigondeaux supposedly is this little tiny 122 pounder. Prove it. Prove it. Go down to 118, win a title there. Prove it. Otherwise, go up to 126 and fight some of these tough guns, these guys that you've been calling out, but you've been calling out and telling them that you want them to come down to 122 or 124 to meet you so that they're weight drained enough for you to feel confident in beating them. Because you did that to Nicholas Walters, you did that to Lomachenko, and you did that to Abner Mares. And you actually backtracked on it with Mares after he knocked out Ponce de Leon. At first it was, oh, meet me at 124. Then after he knocked out Ponce de Leon, oh, I'm not going beyond 122. So which is it? But, I mean, you were willing to go to 124 for Lomachenko, and supposedly you're willing to go to even 126 for Leo Santa Cruz all of a sudden? Okay. But yet, Santa Cruz was with Heyman, and when you were being offered Oscar Escandón, Ray Vargas, Tyson Cave, Moises Flores, by the PBC crew, you turned all those guys down, and you fought John Francisco instead. Tyson Cave openly called you out. Ray Vargas was your mandatory, and you turned both of them down. They were going after you. So, as much as Rigondeaux likes to complain about Frampton and Quigg and Santa Cruz, I'd say Vargas and Cave at the very least, if not Escandón and Flores as well, are in the exact same position with regard to Guillermo himself. Now, with you also have Shinsuke Yamanaka at number 9. And Yamanaka has a good resume. He has a solid resume. But again, it's all at 118. He isn't... And albeit he did defeat arguably two of the top 118-pounders in Anselmo Moreno. One of Mars' best wins, incidentally. And Juan Carlos Payano, who, as some of you may remember, just successfully defended his title against Rashid Warren on a PBC card a few months back. But he arguably lost both of those fights against both Payano and Anselmo Moreno. And what am I saying? He never even fought Payano. He only fought Moreno. Moreno fought Payano. I'm sorry, I'm getting fucked up here. But he arguably beat Moreno. Personally, I didn't have him winning that fight. And when you have a split decision like that, even if it is against a top elite level fighter, Narvaez is equivalent, at the very least equivalent to Moreno in terms of a pound for pound sense, and even more so when you consider Naoya Inoue jumped up 7 pounds 2 weight classes to fight him, and he knocked him out in 2 rounds. So he really belongs ahead of Yamanaka as well. The primary guys you could really make the most solid argument for being over Inoue is Gonzalez, Kovalev, and Golovkin. I mean, possibly Bradley, possibly Pacquiao, just by virtue of a lot of the overall wins that they've had over truly excellent fighters over a number of years, longer than Inoue's been a pro. But I think overall I've pretty much made my point. Because, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't even necessarily put Golovkin ahead of Inoue. I think probably Gonzalez and Kovalev are the only two with a head and shoulders obvious advantage over him resume-wise. And eye test wise, eye test and resume wise, because Inoue isn't even letting these cards go to these fights go to the cards. He's knocking these guys out, and I mean that's pretty much all there is to it, man. Inoue is being underrated, and it's a damn shame. But I mean he's only 22, so before too long, some of y'all gonna learn.